I'm gonna be honest, I've never been to New York, but if the text at the start of this movie is accurate, I sure would appreciate a little quiet place. My name is Ren, and this is my very late review of A Quiet Place Day 1. Welcome back, film family, and thank you for joining me for an admittedly very late review, but one that I can't help but share with you all due to my love for the A Quiet Place franchise. I simply can't not talk about its first ever spin-off slash prequel, where we follow a woman who finds herself trapped in New York City during the early stages of an invasion by alien creatures with ultra-sensitive hearing. And for me, there were a lot of reasons to be excited for this film. Not only is it the first spin-off of one of my favorite franchises, ideally to expand on the world and mythos established in those first two movies, it's also being directed by Michael Sarnosky, who a few years ago offered The Brilliant Pig starring Nicolas Cage, and is now making this interesting jump from small indie to major blockbuster. But apart from this, I really didn't know what to expect from A Quiet Place Day 1. What works about those two original films is the family dynamic at its core. So would it work without the Abbott family? I went in expecting fun scares and thrills, but surprisingly, I was treated to a sweet and emotionally resonant story about the human will to live. This thematic depth is the element that truly allows the film to stand out not just within the franchise, but to me as the most compelling horror film of 2024 thus far. And it beautifully contrasts how Sarnosky stages the large-scale chaos and destruction, how it brings us with our characters right into the epicenter of the action, because this is by far the biggest movie in the franchise scale wise. You've never seen such a populated city, so many victims for all the death angels, and I did just learn that the aliens in here are called death angels. I don't know if you knew that. And this expanding scope gives an entirely new feel to the film and even to its pacing. It's one thing to follow a family living near the woods trying to be silent. That's familiar. But what is strange and unsettling about day one is a completely deserted New York City with no noise, and the contrast that it creates from the start of the film into after the invasion has begun. It makes it an emotionally demanding, bleak, and extremely tense blockbuster that beautifully highlights these intimate, small glimmers of humanity and hope in desperate times. And to convey all of this, what Michael Sarnosky has essentially done is tell a road trip story across New York City, not just to show how deserted it is, how destroyed it has become, but really to understand the scope of this entire city. Just set in one location, technically, this film is so vast and big. And you understand so much better the scale of this invasion on day one. And I specifically point that out because I've noticed many people, including some of my fellow friends and critics here on YouTube, noting that there isn't expansion on the mythology nor our understanding of the aliens. We'll get back to that, but what the film does expand upon is what can be done with these movies, what kind of stories we can tell. And after A Quiet Place Day 1, honestly, give me 100 more of these movies. There is a truth to how little the film expands on what we knew before it. Our knowledge of this world doesn't really take different turns after day one. But there is one crucial scene that gives us new information that we had no idea about before. So for as much as the film doesn't explore the origins and the lore behind the Death Angels, nor does it explain why they're here, I wouldn't want the reason to be explained in a spin-off. It does offer two incredible performances from Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn. And also the cat. The cat in this film is great, and he's a better Frodo than actual Frodo. I really love the dynamic between these two because on such a larger scale film, you essentially only have two characters. And I love stories about broken human beings helping save each other. With Sam, played by Lupita Nyong'o, you have a character who has stopped believing in herself and the world. She sees no hope for her nor for anyone else. And you have a character in Joseph Quinn who has all these regrets despite his young age and sees no hope for himself. And he just wishes he could see his parents one more time, even to just say goodbye. And those small moments of humanity and hope that I mentioned, they find those moments within one another. You see a person who doesn't like anyone, doesn't trust in anyone, and amidst all the chaos and desperation, you see her witnessing the best of humanity. And there's something emotionally powerful about. I do think Joseph Quinn's character is a little bit paper thin. The compelling elements are there. They're not much further explored than what I just mentioned. And that's how the character is presented. The most we know about this character really is that his parents are from Kent, here in the UK, and he's in New York. And I do love how it connects to the rest of the franchise. That may seem obvious how it's connected to the rest of the franchise, but just these small touches, these directions that the characters go by the end of the film, how the story earns those moments, it makes it really interesting where the rest of the A Quiet Place movies could go. Not just in spin offs, but how those spin offs may connect to the Abbott family, the main movies, which I do hope we get a part 3 sooner rather than later. I also feel you cannot talk about any A Quiet Place movie without mentioning the sound design. It is so intense just because of that contrast where you have New York City, it's bustling, it's noisy all the time. And then you have that shock and how much it changes the entire feel and atmosphere, and the character of this city changes from that moment onwards. And so you'll have all those moments where someone accidentally makes a noise, and when that sound design comes on, it is so powerful because now you also have the most death angels in a single movie that we've ever seen. So the chases are all that more thrilling. The escapades, how our characters need to get away from these monsters, has to be all that more creative. And how sound comes into play all through this film is fantastic. It plays with the trademark elements of the franchise as you have to, but it also makes it feel entirely unique to this story set in this city. In terms of issues, like I said, I don't agree that there's 100% failure in expanding the mythology. What I would argue against this film is that, as compelling as the dynamic between these two characters can be, because individually they're not as layered as the Abbott family, the dynamic between these two strangers is not as powerful as the dynamic we have with that family and the transition from generation and the regrets that those parents carry. So it's not quite the same. It's an interesting addition. If anything, it feels funny that this movie comes out around the same time as Maxine, another movie in a Now trilogy that came out of order. It might feel like Day One should have come out first as Day One. So it is complicated. I don't think it quite reaches the level of those first two movies, but just because the dynamic of the characters in those movies is so much more powerful than between these two people. But those are just my thoughts on A Quiet Place. They won a little bit of rambling here and there, but now it's time for you to start the conversation in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts on A Quiet Place franchise as a whole. Rank all three films if you've seen them all in the comments. And what's the next spin-off you want to see in this world? Anything and everything down there. If you're enjoying this review, there's many more like it right up here. Or if you just want to keep talking movies and TV with me, this is the place to be. Consider clicking that subscribe button and you won't miss any future conversations on your favorite movies and TV. A Quiet Place Day One highlights the thrilling nature of the franchise while expanding on its excellent intrigue and intense world building. Driven by Lupita Nyong'o's powerful performance, the heartfelt story perfectly complements the visceral action set pieces. Like I said before, if they're all going to be like this, give me 100 more Quiet Places all around the world. I'm giving A Quiet Place Day One a B+. Thank you so much for watching, Film Family. Apologies again for this review being very late. I still hope you enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Big shout out to my channel members for always supporting the channel, and I'll be back very soon in more videos. So until the next one, love each other, and love the movies.